we are now officially in the most dangerous part of the war in Ukraine, and you're seeing it in action this afternoon. This afternoon, NATO, and I say this very specifically, NATO and Ukrainian forces launched a surprise attack inside mainland Russia in the area of Belgorod. Now, this is an area that is pre-war Russia. Like, this is not an area that they're currently fighting over. No, this has long been Russian territory. So this is the moment when Ukrainian forces shot up a civilian driving a car and then launched attacks on residential buildings. You can see here this car driving down the road. This is a civilian driving down the road. And you can see, do we have the video?
Nope, that's not it.
Nope.
That's not a civilian.
Nope.
Give me a second. No? Sorry, I lost connection, so I just reconnected. So.
Oh, okay. Well, let's try that again then. There we go. Okay. Right. So this is the moment when Ukrainian forces shot up a civilian driving a car. This is a civilian like driving, on the way home from the grocery store. There's some Ukrainians in the woods right there, and no, we're just going to shoot up your car. Take control and commandeer the car. And they were also setting up anti-tank defenses in this area. So people were like looking out their windows in this residential neighborhood, seeing a bunch of Ukrainians using U.S. armored vehicles. Like, what the heck is going on here inside of Russia? So here is an American U.S. M1224, a Max Pro MRAP. This was one of the many vehicles that they were using. This is United States. This was confirmed. You can see videos out of people's windows. They're terrified because they're looking out and they're seeing American armored vehicles with Ukrainian and NATO forces standing there shooting people up. Unbelievable.
That's like a real life Red Dawn. Like imagine you're just driving through your neighborhood and all of a sudden soldiers are walking out of the trees.
Yeah. And you're like, holy smokes, what is going on here? And also, why are American armored vehicles like in Russia?
How'd they get there?
What the hell? So they are driving American-provided armored vehicles. Again, just to underline this, okay, let's just draw a line underneath this. NATO and Ukrainian soldiers launched an attack inside of pre-war Russia using American armor and American weapons, where they fired on civilians and hit residential buildings. Just so we understand, we're clear on what was done here. Imagine if Russia were caught doing that in Virginia, like David just brought up Red Dawn, like Wolverines. Like, can you imagine, like, hey, this outside of Charlottesville, Virginia this afternoon, 39 Russians showed up with tanks and armored vehicles. What would we do? Just tell me in the chat room, like, what would we do? What would the United States do with that kind of a response? Well, we saw after 9/11 what happened, right? So we know what kind of a response we'd have.
Endless war on the Middle East. Is that what you're going for?
I was going to say, we'd attack Kazakhstan.
Yeah, exactly. We'd find something to attack. I know that would be the case.
Unlimited and unending war powers to survey citizens and also world leaders. Is that also what you're looking for?
Probably. That's exactly what would happen. So, and that's exactly what we've done, of course, in the past when these things have happened. So, side note, we got word that Russia killed all 39 of the soldiers that carried out the attacks on these civilians inside of Russia. That came from the Russian Ministry of Defense this afternoon. So that is a bit of breaking news. Now, a United Nations spokesperson a few minutes ago, when asked about it by a reporter, said, this is the first I'm hearing of this. I don't know anything about this. Really? Okay, more lies. And it used to be that when politicians lied to us and we found out about it, we would hold them accountable. They'd be prosecuted at best and maybe thrown out of office at worst. Now we have irrefutable proof that NATO and the Biden administration have been lying to us at every stage of the Ukrainian war, every stage of it. Beyond the obvious lies, of course, that NATO provocation had nothing to do with the Russian invasion, there's unmistakable promises from President Biden at every stage of the war, telling us he's not going to do something and then violating those things a few months later. Let's run through you want to go ahead?
I just want to add really quick. So now Russia also has our vehicles that were used. So that's going to be very easy for Putin to say, hey, look, we've been saying America's involved. And you're like, we haven't been sure. Here are their vehicles on Russian soil.
Yeah. In fact, some of them, they've already been put in some of the Russian museums. They've already shown them off. Like, see this? That we've already captured these.
But those they took from the battlefield in Ukraine.
Yeah.
This now, having them on their own territory, does seem to be a game changer.
Yeah. So beyond the obvious lies that NATO provocation had nothing to do with Russia's invasion, there's the unmistakable promises that President Biden told us at every stage of the war. So let's run through these lies, shall we? In order. Biden told us that he would not send long-range missiles to Ukraine. He told us this. Notice the byline on this article. This is May of last year, 2022. As Ukraine seeks long-range weapons, Biden said U.S. won't send rocket systems that can reach Russia. That was President Biden. He made those comments, by the way, you'll remember, because we covered it here on the show, after Zelensky demanded HIMARS. Remember, he was like, you're going to send us HIMARS. You're going to send us long-range weapons. Yes, you will. To which the United States was like, no, we're not. We're not going to send rocket systems from the United States. We're not going to do that. Then Biden told us he wouldn't send tanks to Ukraine or other armored vehicles or planes or trains or anything because that would lead to World War III. Remember this?
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III, okay?
Yeah, okay. Now, of course, we have World War III. That's what we're in right now. You can call it whatever you want, but that's exactly what this is. When the world is waging a war and all of these countries, the NATO countries, are in alliance to attack Russia, this is a world war. Do you guys have another name for it? I don't have another name for it. And remember when President Biden promised that we wouldn't be sending any F-16 jets to Ukraine. First thing, Biden says U.S. will not provide F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Notice from the Daily Mail at the top, this article is more than 3 months old. Yeah, wow. He said that repeatedly. And now that's about to change as well, because over the weekend, President Biden said the administration now supports sending F-16s to Ukraine.
Okay, then.
So like long-range weapons, no, not going to happen. Tanks, not going to happen. F-16s, not going to happen. Wrong. Lies. All down the list.
Which also means they're going to be lying about pilots because we know that they don't have pilots that can fly F-16 in Ukraine.
Yeah, they don't have anybody. So over the weekend, President Biden said the administration now supports sending F-16s to fly in Ukraine. And Biden announced a new aid package, which includes training for Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16s. But he says Zelensky and I, we had a conversation, and they promised that they won't use F-16s in Russia. So in mainland Russia, just like they didn't use American armor today in Russia. But this will be different. So F-16s will be different than the armor that you just used today to hit civilians in a terrorist attack. Okay.
That's like, when I got my driver's license, I wasn't allowed to drive on the freeway.
Yeah.
And I told my parents, no, I didn't take the freeway to go there. I took the side roads. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm from California. You take the freeway.
You take the freeway.
Right.
Because the side roads.
As soon as you give me the keys, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want.
Yeah. So we're going to give you F-16s.
I'm a rebel like that.
They're going to be bombing everything.
Yeah.
So, and here's my favorite part. Biden says, he had this long talk and he promised them, we're not going to fly these jets. We're just not going to fly them into Russian territory. So we'll only do it to areas that we think are still Ukrainian, like Crimea and the Donbass, areas that they've been attacking since 2014 in a nonstop, of course. Donetsk.
These people voted. They voted. They tried to join Russia in 2014. They were not allowed. They tried again last year, and they voted. We should not be bombing them for the way they voted. That's retaliatory.
Yeah, I would think or AKA a genocide.
Or that.
Well, and I have a question. Has there been any Russian jets verified even in Ukraine? Like, they're just going to fly these jets around Ukraine doing what? Like, because as far as I know, the only strikes that have happened in Ukraine have been Russian missiles coming over. It wasn't jets.
Drones, right?
Over Ukraine, right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's a good question. That's a good.
Well, I mean, let's just remember, there are no pilots. They don't have no Air Force. All of the F-16s that they had initially have been destroyed. So this is not a game changer. It's a game changer in that if they start to use them with NATO pilots launching into Russia, that's the game changer.
I think David's question is Russia flying jets into, is that what you asked, David? Did I get that wrong?
I think so.
'cause
Absolutely.
it makes no sense. Right. It makes no sense for them to even have the jets unless they plan to go into Russia. They're saying they won't. But like, it makes zero sense for them to have them if they're not, because they're not fighting, like shooting down Russian jets, because they're not flying over there.
Okay. I get it.
Right. Or what are you going to do? Like take on a Kinzhal missile, hypersonic missiles flying around?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got
There's
this one.
nothing that
Like
can shoot that down.
Like, like the ghost of Kiev is going to shoot that thing down. Right. Like we know how that's going to go. You need Maverick.
Cessnas is going to be flying an F-16.
Yeah,
exactly. So, just a quote on these jets from President Biden today. U.S. President Biden said on Sunday that he had received a flat assurance from Ukrainian President Zelensky that he would not use Western-provided F-16s to go into Russian territory.
It's a pinky promise.
That's right. To which Michael Tracy said, I like this, the Biden administration's pattern of evolution on sending weapon systems to Ukraine they previously pledged not to send, missiles, tanks, now F-16s, etc., could also be described as a pattern of false assurances and deceit. But you won't see the media describing it as such. Right, they're not outraged about this. Mr. President, why won't they ask them in the press briefing room? Hey, Corinne Jean-Pierre, the president lied at multiple stages. Why should we believe anything coming out of his mouth at all?
Oh, they will say that a decade later. They're now willing to admit that the Iraq wars were wrong. And so as soon as they've got a padding of a decade, they'll say that.
Yeah,
but they won't say it now.
When they're not actively involved in an administration. So instead of being punished for these lies, they're being rewarded for it. Here's the state-run media, also known as CNN, interviewing National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Now, where Jake confirms he confirms the F-16s, which we'll get to in a second. But here he drops the biggest bomb of all on Crimea. Listen.
The UK recently gave long-range missiles to Ukraine. France is following suit. Up until now, the U.S. has balked at giving Ukraine similar weapons. And in February on this show, you would not say whether the U.S. would support Ukrainian efforts to recapture Crimea. That's one of the concerns that has been expressed about whether or not the Ukrainians are given the ability to hit Russian targets in Crimea. Do you think that Crimea is part of Ukraine? Of course. So what would be the objection of
Crimea is Ukraine. I mean, that's a very straightforward thing.
Well, yeah, you answered it directly. I mean, Russia doesn't think so, obviously. But do you think that Ukraine should have weapons that can reach Russian targets in Crimea?
Yes, we have not placed limitations on Ukraine being able to strike on its territory within its internationally recognized borders.
Yes, the answer is yes. Go ahead and attack Crimea.
Because if you want someone back, you abuse them.
That's the best way to. That's the best way to win.
If you ever leave me, Clayton, I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
Right.
And that's how I'll get you back.
And then I'll come back.
Okay.
You just bomb me, and then you know what? I really like these guys that are bombing my house on a regular basis.
I hope I can rejoin them.
Man, attacks on freaking Crimea. Smart move.
And it's also
idiots.
funny how the uranium conversation just went away. Like nobody talks about that anymore. Like even
the
when they're
depleted
talking
uranium.
about, we made these promises. Yeah,
Yeah, good point. We left that out. There's just not enough time.
That's another lie. Look, I'd be here all night if I had hit every lie that they say. So the answer is yes. Let's attack Crimea. This is a terrifying prospect that could lead to nuclear war. The New York Times a few months ago warned us that it was on the table. That the Biden administration is actively considering it. Let them attack Crimea. This is the solution. This is the solution. Let's help Ukraine attack Crimea, said the New York Times. Here's Caitlin Johnstone's take on this madness. U.S. may help Ukraine launch an offensive on Crimea. And she says, Moscow has considered Crimea a part of the Russian Federation since its annexation in 2014, meaning efforts to recapture it would, at least in theory, be treated the same as an invasion of any other part of Russia. It was only by way of arbitrary bureaucratic fluke that Crimea wound up as a part of Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union. And Crimeans overwhelmingly prefer to be part of the Russian Federation. That we may be soon staring down the barrel of a nuclear third world war over something so pedantic is a very dark shade of absurd, she writes.
You don't have to rewind the clock that much. Read any history book about the new Ukraine since the overthrow of the government in the last 20 years. And people in Crimea overwhelmingly said, what'd you just do to my passport? That they came in, made them Ukrainian, and they were like, what? I don't want this. It's not a media narrative. It's true. You can read books about it.
But the Biden administration thinks that Crimea is part of Ukraine. So shouldn't we listen to the Biden administration? Should we listen to pencil neck Jake Sullivan at the Pentagon?
I mean, I don't know where this narrative came from other than the Obama administration.
Right.
When they wanted to talk strong about Crimea. And, the narrative was, we want to talk strong about talking strong. Yeah. That's what the Obama administration did about this in order to bolster Russia as an enemy. But this is what these people wanted overwhelmingly. She's right.
Yeah. So Crimea might have overshadowed the F-16 comments, the jets. But here is the testiest part of the interview where Jake Tapper feels kind of misled. Like, you told me back in February that you weren't going to send F-16s. I feel like you should have been warmongering more. You should have been more of a warmonger back then. Why did you wait so long to warmonger? Listen.
Well, let's talk about some of the accomplishments there in Japan. President Biden told the G7 leaders that the United States is going to support this joint effort to train Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16 fighter jets. As you know, just a few months ago, the president said there was no basis militarily for giving Ukraine jets and that Ukraine didn't need them at all. What changed, and would these jets not have been more effective if Ukraine had been trained and had them in time for the upcoming counteroffensive?
Well, actually, Jake, when President Biden answered that question, he was talking about the preparations that the United States and our allies were making with Ukraine for the counteroffensive. And the critical systems for the counteroffensive are not planes. They're tanks and artillery systems and HIMARS and huge amounts of ammunition. And the United States has mobilized an exceptional effort to deliver on time and in full everything Ukraine needs to launch this counteroffensive. Now that we've done that, we can look forward to the long-term capacity of Ukraine to be able to defend itself and deter Russian aggression. Fourth-generation fighter aircraft, Western fighter aircraft, F-16s are relevant to that fight. That's why the president told his G7 colleagues this weekend that he will, in fact, support the training of Ukrainian pilots. But he is focused on the type of system needed for the phase of the fight that is at hand. And for this counteroffensive, he has delivered at speed and at scale what the Ukrainians need.
Is President Biden going to allow European countries to give their F-16s to Ukraine? And will these jets arrive in Ukraine before the end of 2023?
I'm not going to put a timetable on it. What the president has said is that he'll sit with his European allies and with the Ukrainians to work out who, when, and how many jets get transferred, and we're in the process of doing that right now.
Would the U.S. give any F-16s?
I think given the numbers that are currently available from the stocks of our European allies and the fact that based on the money the Congress has given us, there's so many other priorities for systems to give Ukraine, it may be that we focus more on third-party transfer, but the president hasn't made a final decision.
Yeah, so more HIMARS, more long-range weapons. I like what Byron says here in our chat room on Rumble. Byron27 says, does that news guy know that he's lying about Jake Tapper? I don't know. It's part of it. Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, to me, it sounds like it's like the administration, like what they're doing with all these weapons and stuff is like those people that will text a slightly sexually suggestive text to somebody, and then depending on their reaction, say, "No, I was just kidding." Like, how could you do that? Like no, when he said we weren't going to send him, he just meant not for the counteroffensive.
Right.
Well, of course we're going to send them for the long-term goal. You know, like, but that's
long-term stability
means.
Yeah, long-term stability, but not like this immediate war with Russia, but like long-term stability. We'll send them for them.
And I'm not happy that we're now talking about the end of 2023. What's the battle plan for then? Because we were told, okay, just there's a winter counteroffensive coming. That didn't happen. We need the ground to thaw. We need the ground to dry up. Now it's just the spring counteroffensive. Now we're almost to summer. Well, it's a summer counteroffensive. Like one season ahead, I think we can sort of hang on and hope for peace talks. But like the end of the year, we're saying the end of 2023. That it's just hard to conceive of.
No, and I've got a tweet that I'm going to show you here in a few minutes as I wrap this up on specifically like how long this goes on here. So he's pissed. Jake Tapper's pissed here that we didn't send F-16s sooner. That's basically what he's saying. That basically CNN's position here.
I just want to throw in really quick, and how motivational for all these other countries that want so bad to join NATO, that a non-NATO country can get so much support from around the world. That should make them happy. You don't have to join NATO. Just show a little interest in it and we'll support you.
Yeah, you don't even have to be a card-carrying member of NATO to get all the benefits, like your AARP membership. You just know an old person and you get all the benefits. So
as long as your flag goes with our decor, we'll wear it.
If it matches the drapes. So this is what Caitlin Johnstone says about the warmongering from Jake Tapper. Says, it's so obnoxious how the only time you ever see these mass media propagandists challenging the U.S. government on its warmongering is when they're pushing it to be more warlike and demanding answers on why it isn't warmongering more. This creates the illusion of brave adversarial journalism, when in reality, these empire cronies are just manufacturing consent for the increased aggressions the U.S. wants to wage anyway. So Jake Tapper's just basically pissed that we didn't do this earlier, that we didn't send these jets earlier, and he's upset that he was put off about it for so many months. So this Western...
I'm sure he really knows how to make advances on the battlefield.
Yeah. So this Western coalition that Sullivan is referring to is Portugal, Britain, France, the United States, Netherlands, Denmark, and Belgium. Denmark crapped its pants today. They were so excited. They were so excited to send jets. They wasted no time. Like President Biden said, hey, we're going to send F-16s. Denmark was like, yeah, we're joining the F-16 coalition. We're going to send our F-16s. Denmark is getting in on the action. I have to think there's a massive financial incentive to send these old F-16s. Get rid of your old aircraft program. Turn in your old aircraft. Here, send it to Ukraine, and then Lockheed or NATO will reimburse you with some brand new Lockheed Martin F-16s. Get those General Dynamics F-16s, lined up. By the way, Portugal, we learned this afternoon. I'm very proud of Portugal. I'm surprised by this. They've sent a few tanks. But Portugal said, no, we're not sending F-16s to Ukraine. We need them. Okay. What is Portugal's the third safest country in the world? What do you need them for? But anyway, nevertheless, Portugal's we're not sending our F-16s to Ukraine.
No,
so good.
thank you.
So good. So Denmark went right for it. And Portugal said no. We'll wait to see what these other countries say. And just so we understand this, of course, this is a huge money laundering scheme, sending all these weapons over there and then money back and forth and washing it back and forth. Just so we understand what Russia has done, Russia has already destroyed all of Ukraine's F-16s, all of them that they had at the start of the war. They're gone. Ukraine has no air force and they have no pilots. But don't worry, we're going to get them trained up real fast. So there's no reason to do this other than to escalate a war with Russia. I spoke to a former NATO pilot today who told me, I'm just going to bring up what this NATO pilot told me, and it's interesting. So I asked specifically, how long would it take to train an F-16 pilot?
Could Natali do it?
Could I do it? Right? I have no training whatsoever. And what this pilot explained to me was the training takes 8 to 10 months. That includes everything from instrument qualifications, carrier qualifications, air-to-air syllabus qualifications, air-to-ground syllabus qualifications, low-altitude tactics. If already a pilot, you could train someone on specifics within maybe 3 months if they're good. Someone would be assuming massive risk, however, if they did that. And smaller numbers of pilots means more training events each and every day. So because if you have fewer pilots, they'd be doing more and more training exercises. So the answer is it would take a hell of a long time to get these pilots from nothing to flying.
Oh, so then...
And that's...
Philip, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that, yeah, that's getting them to the ability to fly the F-16, but to use it as a weapon, to actually fight in it. That's an entirely different monster.
Yeah.
So then you're basically just sending somebody up there to die against a seasoned pilot, that has combat experience.
Yes. Yeah. So this is like a rookie going up, this is like a rookie playing right now.
Wait, David was going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is what an easy strategy for Russia. Hey, we're going to knock out all their F-16s. They're on the ground, so we don't really have to.
That's the thing, right?
You're going to bunker sitting there.
You're going to send all this equipment, which we've already seen happening. They're going to show up in these warehouses. We're going to know exactly where they are, like sitting ducks, right? And they'll be destroyed the moment they arrive. I mean, it's asinine to think that they won't.
So when Zelensky told Congress, when he visited earlier in the year, that we don't need your training, we know exactly what to do, just send the weapons, would you call that a lie?
I would call that an absolute lie, because he was saying, he said, we don't need your men. We don't need your personnel. We are Ukrainians. We know how to, we know how to
No, he
man these
literally
weapons.
said we know how to use them.
Right. We know how to use them. So we're going to get Vlad over here. He's going to go up in one of these F-16s. He's never flown before, but now he's like
How hard can it be?
He's like the Red Baron. So anyway, there's no reason to do this other than to escalate a war with Russia. That's the only reason you're sending these F-16s. And this morning, Russia responded. Russia says that the West providing F-16s to Ukraine is a colossal risk, and that this would be an escalation of the war. We see that Western countries are still adhering to the escalation scenario, and it involves colossal risk for themselves, says Russia. In any case, this will be taken into account in all of our plans, and we have all the necessary means to achieve the goals we have set. Okay, so who do you believe here? I don't know. Do you believe the guys that, Jake Sullivan? You guys believe the guys in NATO right now? Or do you believe the guys who literally today have raised the Russian flag over Bakhmut? Overnight, the city that Ukrainians call Bakhmut has finally fallen to Russians. After 9 months of bloody fighting, Russia's head of the Wagner Group announced it had 100% control of the city, and that it will now return to its official Russian name. And this is going to be harder for me to say. Artyomovsk, I hope I'm saying that right.
Artyomovsk, I don't know. Someone in the chat said, Vlad must be really happy with the Redacted group. We're not saying that any of this is good, but we have been following the narrative since the beginning of this conflict, and Russians' story has not changed. What they've said and what they've done has not changed. If you follow the U.S. narrative, it's all over the place, and it's full of lies. We don't want anything other than peace talks. We're not rooting for Russia. We're not rooting for anything other than total peace talks now.
Yeah. And stop the genocide in the Donbass.
So if that to you seems like we are then, which Vlad, that we are on one side or the other, you're not listening and you're being overly reductive in the world. And that is no way to be in global politics. So tone it down.
Person. Yeah, I know. Anyway, so
not
here's
you, sorry.
No, not me. So here's the map. So take a look at Bakhmut here on the map. So this is the next target is the city of Donetsk, where civilians have been, of course, under constant attack from Ukraine since 2014. Overnight, Russia launched several massive attacks. Now, keep this map up on the screen, if you will. At Ukrainian forces, overnight, Russia launched several massive attacks at Ukrainian forces near Donetsk. According to reports, hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers were killed. So get ready, guys. Get ready for the media to tell you that Bakhmut wasn't a big deal. But the real deal will be Donetsk. Like, this is the narrative that's going to start to unfold. You can even see the size of the font on the map. Like, oh, Bakhmut, the fortress that we thought was so important, well, it's fallen. It's not such a big deal because the real story is Donetsk. Okay. To hear even President Biden yesterday kind of downplaying Bakhmut like, it's no big deal. Although the West for months was telling us how it was a huge deal and it was going to turn the tide of the war, but now it's not a big deal. I love how this narrative shifts, the lie is constant. Listen.
Bakhmut. Bakhmut is a discussion about whether or not it's been lost or whatever. And well, the truth of the matter is the Russians have suffered over 100,000 casualties in Bakhmut. That's hard to make up. It's hard to make up. So whether or not there are troops in Bakhmut occupying. There's not many buildings left standing in Bakhmut. It's a pretty devastated city. But they have been able to move in a direction that they've been able to lock down an awful lot of the Russian forces, including the Wagner Group. So with regard to the F-16s, F-16s would not have helped in that regard at all. It was unnecessary. For example, let's take just Bakhmut, for example.
Yeah. So the Wagner Group is under control and locked down? Really? Okay.
Only the head of the Wagner Group today said we secured this city and we will be handing it over to the Russian military on Thursday.
And the Russian
they will be leaving of their own volition.
And on their way to Donetsk. So apparently somehow they've locked down the Wagner Group. They now have 100% control of the city. Okay. All right, whatever. And I love the backdrop, right? He's in Hiroshima. Like, just think about the imagery of that for a moment. He's there lecturing the world about, being the arbiter of truth. And he's literally there at ground zero in Hiroshima, of all places. Anyway.
That his own country bombed.
Yeah, exactly.
And Zelensky actually took the opportunity to say, like, Hiroshima looks like Bakhmut. Not that he would know. He's been abroad since the attack on the Kremlin in early May. But they are using that to sort of bolster their existing narrative. So that's not lost on them.
And someone in the chat saying here, let me see what it says. He's smiling. Oh, Outside In says, and he's smiling about the 100,000 souls deleted. He's a demon. Yeah. And where did he come up with that number? 100,000 casualties? I don't know where he's even gotten that number from. But anyway.
He says you can't make that up. I think what he means is he made that up.
Right. Yeah. So, and this major escalation, I thought I'd share this. I'll share this in a second. I moved some things around here, but Spiritor on Twitter reminded me of this. Zelensky admitting 2 months ago that defeat in Bakhmut would likely lead to peace negotiations and that his country wouldn't tolerate more fighting. This is from the Associated Press. We can't lose the steps because the war is a pie. Pieces of victory, small victories, small steps, Zelensky said. Zelensky's comments were an acknowledgement that losing the 7-month-long battle in Bakhmut, the longest of the war thus far, would be more of a costly political defeat than a tactical one. He predicted that the pressure from a defeat in Bakhmut would come quickly, both from the international community and within his own country. Our society will feel tired, he said. Our society will push me to have compromise with them. Oh, you mean like peace?
That's hilarious because the Wall Street Journal today literally said that Ukraine backed off the war in Bakhmut so that they could rest and recuperate personnel and weapons. Where this comes from, I don't know, but the Wall Street Journal and the Western press is making it seem like they sat back like,
they're like, yeah,
this one's it's a sunk cost, guys.
So we're going to sit back.
We didn't like that place anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't even really like Bakhmut.
I don't like that woman anyway. So I just want to leave you with this tweet on this particular story here. And I think this is appropriate. So this is from Shea Bose. Says, the United States tells the Ukrainian people that America will stand with you as long as it takes. In Afghanistan, it took 20 years, $3 trillion, 70,000 dead people. Civilians, and then they left overnight. In 1989, the Afghans that we supported, they were heroes fighting Russia, right? And then in 2019, they're terrorists fighting the United States, so we're leaving. So guess what? That's exactly what's going to happen in Ukraine. Like, we already have seen the template. And when Jake Tapper asked Jake Sullivan, wait a minute, you're saying that this is going to take years? Because Jake Sullivan admitted this is going to be years. He's like, well, no, I just mean like, this part of it could be long, and then just a long-term stability of Ukraine is long-term. Oh, you don't mean the war will last 20 years. Sure. We know where this is headed, guys. Let us know your thoughts on this in the chat below. A lot of moving pieces on the war. I think this is the most dangerous phase because now we really see what happens in Donetsk and what the full-on Russian response will be to these attacks inside of Russia. So, oh boy, here we go, guys. Over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be crazy. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.